Good afternoon. Welcome back to the Extraordinary Technology Conference 2017. So last year I was traveling through Texas, and a friend of mine told me that I needed to stop in Austin and meet an inventor that was working with hydrogen. And so it was incredibly hot. It was like 110 degrees in the shade, and I went to meet this. Went to meet this inventor that I just heard vague things about. I get there, and he's got a motorcycle and a car that had almost every single conceptualized idea of boosting and free energy work implemented into it in some way. And I was just blown away. I invited him up here to TeslaTech that year, and they are actually coming back here to present. David von Ohlerking and Vasiliki Rigny. They hail from Austin, Texas. They've been doing all sorts of amazing things with engines, plasma, hydrogen, and whatnot in their backyard. So please, give a warm welcome to these two.
Thank you, buddy. All right, is this thing working? Sounds like it. Can you get your mic? You got it?
Yeah.
Cool. How you doing, guys?
Good.
One person's doing awesome, so we're okay.
Okay, so to start the presentation off, we're going to have a video. So if you could play that video, please.
Give John a second to pull it up. It's a quick time lapse of some work we were doing, amalgamizing a project together, like Vernon was saying. We'll just let it play through and let you guys digest into the moment. No, the sound's not there. So in the video, there's a couple people you'll notice helping out. You might know Mark Cooper. He runs 100mpgmotors.com. We helped him build other vapor carbs. He actually has a kit car Lamborghini Diablo. So it sounds fancy, it looks cool. And I mean, the results are pretty up and down. We're still in the primary stages, but we've gotten up to 80 with it, 80 miles to the gallon. It's not going to stop there. It's very crude right now, but he's a whiz at programming and networking, so he builds computers. He was in town to help us do this, and right after he left, the computer popped. So, no computer. But this whole project is basically us putting together a mix of vapor carburetors, hydrogen units, and I guess we'll get into it later.
Yeah.
We'll get into it. That's kind of the morals of our lab.
That's pretty much our style.
That old man wandering around in the background is actually T.R. Knudsen. Some of you might know him as one of the fathers of hydroxy research. He implemented a lot of mining and welding with the gas. There's great things to do with it, and we're not going to go into that because that'll take an entire presentation. But this is the V8 engine out of a Mercedes 560. Took a little bit to get it in, and we'll be bringing it next year. We'll take you around in the parking lot, but we did a bunch of measurements in the beginning before we started it. We took it onto dynamometers. We did exhaust emission tests. We did all of that before we started hydrogen boosting or doing vapor carbs, because there's a lot of this work that doesn't have preliminary controls, and there's too many variables in this work to just wing everything. You can, but then you don't know why things are working or how well they're working. We didn't bring it.
Next year, though.
Look at her go. Right here we actually have the car running just off gasoline fumes. There should be 8 injectors for that engine. We only have 1 injector. And normally the computer would control this, but we just have a button that was pulsating the injection. Well, dang. I guess we'll just jump right into this. It's a lot easier to just go and then keep the ball rolling. So, here we go.
So we've done some other projects, such as the motorcycle that you guys might have seen last year. I was out in the parking lot, and it was all analog, so we'd have to turn a bunch of butterfly knobs to get the mix right.
Last year we didn't have an issue of a computer blowing up, but we just didn't make a computer because we were stubborn enough to think we could just be a computer. Vernon was witness to this. Anyone else that was here last year probably saw it in the trailer. We started riding the bike up here, but I'd have the throttle and a valve to rich it out, and then to lean it out, and then she'd be in the back, and she had an EGR valve, a hydrogen valve. It's ridiculous. So we thought this year we'd be ready in time with a computer doing all that on the car, and the computer blew, so we were thinking oh, I'll just drive.
Yeah.
And then,
I'll just press a button, and then, when we get up hills, we'll just, double time it. And so I would get a lot of muscle strength, but that wouldn't be really fun for 14 hours, so.
Austin's not just down the road. But, the computer wouldn't take too much longer for us to rebuild. It's just it happened 3 days before we came here. But we still have enough to talk about, and we're going to delve back into the car later, but we're going to be talking on a good deal of how and why hydrogen boosting works, or vapor carburetors, or a lot of these not that crazy devices will function as far as boosting goes. There's a lot of people who want to get into it, but it's kind of rocky on where to start, and then you have so much extraordinary information. You could go out and start studying what Bob Boyce is doing, and that's not electrolysis. That's just, there is levels and levels above, but you need somewhere to start, and there's so much information that the how and why kind of get lost. I guess we can just jump forwards, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think we took this car last year.
No, we had a white car last year. We went on a road trip with this one 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a little demonstration of how and why hydrogen works, and we're just going to use our hands to demonstrate for you.
Again, not the woo-woo stuff, not any plasmoid energy, just the simplest, you bought a crappy cell on eBay and you're starting out.
All right,
So, if you're going to assume this would be at top of your top of the cylinder stroke in an engine, I guess we'll step back. For anyone that needs a refresher on a 4-stroke, you essentially have, this is your piston, you have a compression stroke, which takes your fuel mix, your air and your gas, and once it's up there, it's on a higher pressure, it's hot, you get the spark, that's where you get your power stroke from. The 1 stroke right there, the power stroke, is where you're converting all your energy from chemical energy to thermal energy to your actual kinetic movement. But in a chemical reaction like that, the internal combustion engine is horrible because fuel will burn at 1 speed. Fuel will burn at 1 speed. So maybe at idle you're going, and then you have the rest of the stroke where it's just heat expansion, and that's fine. And then it blows it out the exhaust. But if you start revving it up, you're going higher RPMs. Eventually you're going to get into an issue where the is not lining up with how fast your engine's going. You can be up here, and I'll just slow down for frame of reference. If you have the spark go off, and you're already pushing up in your exhaust stroke, that means you have all the flame, all the heat that should be being used for the power, and it's just going out the exhaust. It's just wasted exhaust heat, and then beyond that you have residual heat in the block that you try and hemorrhage out through your radiator. All the hydroxy is doing in a simple setup, I can't stress it enough that there is steps and bounds and evolutions above just simple electrolysis. But we're not talking about that today. Just regular boosting for beginners, you have the ability to burn your fuel better and faster in a certain frame of time. In this car, for example, what were we getting, City?
We were getting like 18 city.
We were crazy enough. We flew up to New Jersey, bought this car, completely broken, dead, did not work. We went through TSA with all of that. Yes, they didn't like us.
They actually broke one, which was kind of rude.
Yeah, they took it apart and broke it, and they didn't know what to do, so they just kind of shoved it back in the bag, and that was that. But anywho, just to prove the point, we went up, bought a car that hadn't run in 2 or 3 years, hooked everything up, and just started bombarding it until it started running. And after replacing something like a radiator, we drove it across the country just to do a mileage test to show the reduction of carbon and the benefits. But the thing that's always disconnected, in beginners at least, is there's no one telling you why it's working, aside from it's burning your fuel better and carbon deposits, yay. Just in this stroke again, or I guess let's be the top view. So now your piston's going back here and coming towards you guys. If you have the spark plug here or anywhere, you have a fire front, right? So your fuel mix starts here and it expands out to the other side at that rate. So if that's happening when the cylinder's going down, you're perfect to get all of that out of it. But if you're at the higher RPMs, you might need it to burn faster or to burn more fully or release the energy. It depends on what your circumstances are. In this car, we found it was like 1.5 liters for this engine, where our MPG in the city would drop from 18 miles to the gallon to 16. But on the highway, we would go from 23 or 25 up to 42. And that was repeatable all the time. You know, if you had a tailwind or a headwind, it would fluctuate some.
Yeah, the highest we got with the tailwind or whatever happened was like 60, and we could never replicate it. So we were like, oh well, whatever happened, like we don't know.
42 was the number. Basically doubling our mileage. 98% increase was what we could always get if we tuned the cells, used the right amount of electrolyte, to just focus on what our high RPM would be when we were traveling 80 or 90 miles an hour on the highway. It's 90, let's be real.
It's definitely 90.
But, and I mean, it's crazy. Like, we took the cells off recently to start putting them on the 560, and driving around the cars without it, like, I keep running out of gas because I'm just not used to filling up like 3 times a week. Well, I drive assloads. Texas is big, just believe me on that. So in the cylinder, just going back to it, if you have a hydroxy mix, HHO, Brown's gas, whatever name you want to give it, that when the spark goes off up here, the hydrogen-oxygen mix will explode. It's not going to slowly burn and combust. It's going to pow, 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 all throughout. And if you think about the metaphor of a fuse, which is going to burn faster, a fuse lit on one end or a fuse lit on both ends, or a fuse lit in 15 sections? So depending on where you need the power curve to change to, you can add different amounts of hydroxy. And it's just going to be something you have to experiment with. There is the basic benefit you're going to get, which it tends to be around 20%, and that's just from cleaning your fuel and burning it better all around. Once you start trying to use too much, then you're going to start putting strains on your alternator, which is going to slow down your engine, which is going to nullify some effects at certain areas. This is a lot of the reason people get really, really mixed results, because they'll buy a cell, and oh, hey, cool, yeah, I feel the pep, and then they do a mileage test and they're getting the exact same or worse, which that can also boil down to newer cars. You have the issue of the ECUs either running its fuel mix based off the O2 sensor or from a NOx sensor changing its timing. But both of these things go out the window with hydroxy because your emissions drop at least by 80%. All the dyno tests we've done have been 80 to 90% in carbon monoxide and unburnt fuel emissions. It just goes away, which also reduces NOx like crazy. So if you have a newer Mercedes where, you spent $30,000 and for some reason you tried to hydrogen boost it and now you're getting like half of what you used to, in those they're advancing their timing until they hear NOx. There's NOx sensors in the engine. They'll advance it until they hear that, and then the computer will come off that a little bit to try and save efficiency, which, again, goes out the window with this stuff. So a lot of the issue is just not understanding how the basic forms of this technology work, and then not knowing what to do to implement it to your situation. You're going to get 20% if you get one of these cells that is built well. In fact, somewhere out there should be Andrew, and he actually sells some really nice equipment. Visit him. You can let me have a plug. But from that, it brings up the point that you really have to take measurements and try and figure out what it is you're doing and why. If we're just going to be dumping amounts of hydrogen in, then we're going to have these 50,000 forms of people arguing that their cell puts out more gas, and I'm going to run my car off of it that way. But if they don't know how it works, they can't do anything with that information. That's just the most simple explanation, and I just wanted to get that out there, that
Know what you're doing.
I guess,
Take observations.
try and find someone who knows what's working for them and why. It could be totally different from my explanation, because there's, again, so many different levels of this gas. In fact, you can actually measure it. If you, one of the easiest ways to tell how strong your gas is, go to Home Depot, get a 50-foot length of some of that thin nylon hose. Leave it spooled, but bring an end out of either side. Start running your gas through it until you can tell it's coming out the other end. Fill it up, put a camera in front of it, slow-mo, whatever you need to do. You can take the volume of air in there and measure that, how long it takes to burn from one side to the other. There's your base measurement. Now you can apply that to how many cubic centimeters of displacement you have in your engine. That tells you how fast that hydroxy is going to burn when the spark plug goes off. So then you're going to know, well, the gas I'm making from this cell can do this, so I need to make it happen at this RPM. And you can just leave it off the rest of the time. In that red car, we ended up just making a little a vacuum sensor that basically would only turn on the device once we were above like 2,500 RPM or something.
Yeah.
And then it's fine. That way we didn't get the loss in the city, but we got the massive gains while we were on the highway. Which, it's kind of hard to transition from here, so we're just going to do it, and I promise it will relate. Just run with us for a second.
So the next thing that we're going to talk about or touch on is our lab that we're building in Austin, Texas. The lab is off-grid, and it's also its own self-sustaining ecosystem, meaning that what we eat goes back to like the fish that would probably chew up our food, and then that would feed the plants, and then the cycle starts over and over again.
Just like what's happening outdoors, Earth's been doing this stuff without us. It never needed our help. So if we just copy that, we can create an ecosystem for the particulate situation we want. We can create that. We can have just your basic hydroponic garden and then implement, worms and chickens to get all this natural, normal stuff going on, and that's what just keeps our lab afloat. We can sell off these products. We've already got contracts with all the local, co-ops and grocery stores and stuff.
Which is pretty popular in Austin.
Yeah, Austin's a pretty progressive town, so it's easy there. But, again, it will relate. Just hang on. The whole thing being off-grid is just another way of trying to amalgamize all these other techs. It just provides a platform, kind of like this conference. You have a like-minded situation. You have a certain flow of thought. You have people, even if it's different, between holistic things and trying to boost mileage or gain efficiency or straight up over Unity devices. All of us have this mindset of progressing and making something better. So if you're in an environment where you do what you say, it's a lot easier to go with the flow.
So if you guys are interested in checking out the lab or even helping build it, you can definitely talk to us about it, because we're more than happy to have whoever wants to come visit, check it out, stay there.
The thing that is going on currently, right after the conference actually, we're flying our buddy in from Thailand, Bangkok, and this guy is brilliant.
Really awesome.
In his dorm, he builds 3D printers that 3D print parts for bigger 3D printers. And he has done this to the point where he has built a 3D printing CNC machine with 2 animatronic arms, and he wrote an AI code that just tells it to keep building them. And that's awesome to me. I'm not a computers guy, but he's coming down. He's literally moving into the lab. He just got a burst of inspiration, and he's moving all the way to America into the lab. He's going to build the biggest one yet, which, look in this area, the bottom floor of the lab is 15 feet tall. Not much different from in here. Just think of a 3D printer the size of that area. Can we talk about the plane?
Yeah.
I'm just going to brush on things. We're making a lot of stuff there. One of them is a super light plane, ultra light really. Mm-hmm. And it's more of the same stuff here. It's amalgamizing all these different technologies, different ways of storing energy or harvesting energy that you didn't pay for. I consider that free energy. Most other people consider a closed loop system putting out over Unity to be free energy, but I didn't pay for the sun.
That's pretty free.
It will relate. One of the simplest things we've built is actually a Fresnel lens, which any of you know as a magnifying glass. If you take that, just the light and the heat from the sun, you can magnify it down to a pinpoint, hit something like an aluminum block that's hooked up to a water reservoir. Not only can you now distill water for drinking later, but in its phase change, in its expansion, you can be spinning up a turbine. Tesla turbines are one of my favorite things, so I condone them. But you could run a Stirling engine too, you could do any of this. From there, you are generating electricity just because of basic principles of physics, and you haven't had to break any laws of thermodynamics. You just grabbed them and went on a date with them. You're just using what people will agree with you, what the physicists will agree with you on, and using it. You don't have to get a solar panel to harvest solar energy. You can make an array of magnifying glasses. And there's other ways to convert heat energy into electricity. There's thermoelectric generators. They're basically little plates of two dissimilar metals, and when you heat them up, you get an electric charge. They're like 3% efficient though. And a good Tesla turbine, you can get upper 80s. I mean, I've heard of much higher, I've never seen them, but there's much more efficient ways to get energy than what we're doing currently. It's not like we've written the whole book yet. Humanity's still got a long way to go. But in all of these things, whether it's hydroponic gardening and electrical energy generation, you sitting on a bicycle in the morning, spinning up a crank that lifts a flywheel pendulum that just swings all day. You need some way to store energy, and flywheels are awesome. And you're going to hear another talker on these. It's not just one. But another guy coming to the lab. He's been building really cool, I guess they're closer to crystal cell batteries than they are just capacitors, but graphene capacitors are an amazing technology that I'm sure all of us are just going to be inundated with pretty soon. I don't see it not being one of the most common things talked about. One of the prototypes he made is a 3 amp hour battery. You know, what you have in your cell phones, your smartphones. It takes about 15 seconds to charge. It still has a slow discharge rate, so it operates just the same. You have to stack the cells differently, but is there anyone out there that would prefer their laptop or cell phone charges in under a minute? Yeah, it would be kind of pleasant. He's been building this, and this is what's going to connect all of the weird stuff I've been talking about. Just like all the other stuff in here, there's common threads between these things, whether it's the femtosecond pulses that give you the back spikes that you can harvest the energy from, whether it's the fact there is some other type of energy that we don't really understand how it works, whether it's literally we're talking about placebo. There's always these weird common threads, and once you grab onto one and run with it, you can start synthesizing, amalgamizing all this stuff together, and you can make something better. You can improve on what you have. You can just create something bigger, which Vernon's introduction was very nice. It is all we do. The lab is basically another version of the car, another version of the 560. You know, the hydroponic stuff is cool and all, but the whole idea is to close the loop. We're not talking about over unity this year. I'd like to later. But just getting close to unity is good enough for progressing so much further. We live on a rock. It is a closed system. Just look a bigger picture and we've got it. Except we've also got all this extra space debris. We've got sunlight. We've got extra radiation coming from space. We are more than a 100% system. We've got everything else coming in. So we can afford to be a little bit crappy. Like, we don't have to hit perfect unity all the time. We don't have to hit over unity. If you find ways to figure out where your efficiencies are lost, like the exhaust in a car, the radiator, if you, like, as Moray was mentioning, the heat energy is almost 80%, probably 70% of what's wasted in an internal combustion engine. If you do what I mentioned earlier, generate electricity from that wasted heat, find something that has the parameters you want. If you find a fluid that does phase change under a certain pressure at 200 degrees Fahrenheit, where engines want to stay, you can hook that up to the radiator. You can still run your regular coolant, but then instead of an air to water exchange, you can have a liquid to liquid exchange where you've got your radiator fluid, but you're not just hemorrhaging out all this energy into the atmosphere for absolutely no reason. You could be collecting that into, previously mentioned, a liquid that phase changes. You can use that phase change and expansion to turn a turbine. You condense it back after it. Now you've still got the normal operation of your engine, but you're just finding a way to remove the losses. You're finding a way to take back some of the energy you wasted. And this is where people get confused. You get someone who knows a thing or two, they know the word thermodynamic. That's their claim to fame. I'm sure you've been on the internet. But they don't really understand that you can easily reclaim wasted energy. You don't have to be breaking thermodynamics to be tripling your mileage. On little generators, like the last presentation, there's one of those dinky little Harbor Freight generators. They're awesome because they're really cheap and it doesn't matter if you blow them up.
Which we have done.
It's fun. Just vapor carbureting, just getting more surface area on the gas, similar to what we said before, instead of adding hydroxy, vapor carburetors are really just, it's making it easier to burn. You've got a better mix. Can you be a presentation again?
Yes.
Can you be a drip of gasoline?
Yes.
Okay, we've got a drip of gasoline here, right? Liquid gasoline doesn't burn. I'm sure everyone in here knows that. You can throw a cigarette in a bucket of gas, and as long as it's not Texas, it won't catch on fire. So you have the surface area of the drip that is touching oxygen. That's where you can have the oxide. That's where you can have the chemical reaction. So say, this is a very big drip. Let's say it takes a full second for this outer layer of vapor to actually burn. If you break this apart into 500 smaller drips, each of those surface areas still take the same amount of time, but you let out all that thermal energy 500 times faster because you did the same reaction much smaller. Which is why I like Moray's interest in the nanoplasmoids. Surface area is key on gaining back a lot of the lost energy, a lot of the lost efficiency of combustion engines, that is. In fact, when you look at a lot of this stuff, you have to scale it down or speed it up. When you look at things like the PAP engine, when you look at things like what Stan Meyer was doing, I can't see in femtosecond bursts. I think I'm like 40 frames a second, not 14 trillion? A little bit off. It's either surface area or getting shorter bursts and just having a different frame of reference. It's looking at it from a different way, and it's really hard to do that. Right now I can look out and see you guys, but I can't see what your cells are doing. There's a lady out there that can see what your cells are doing, and that's cool. But these are windows we can use to look into what we can't see. These are windows to measure what we can't figure out. Without doing that, though, we're not going to get anywhere. And we're just going to be arguing and reading the same textbook, which says, what did we read in high school? What was it that the maximum energy was you could ever get from solar for the planet Earth?
7%.
If you have any children our age, that's what we're taught. 7% is the maximum energy the Earth can run on from solar.
Who came up with that number?
What is that? That's a lack of testing. That's a lack of asking why and figuring it out. That's just, oh, I read that answer in the book. Yeah, no, I know, man. So I implore anyone here, it doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter if you're a cashier, you can find some common thread between what you do and what someone else does. Please try and bring it together, find some correlation, and share it with them. Teamwork is the fastest way to get anything done. Again, like Moray mentioned, it only takes one mind to change the world, but it takes an army to actually get it done. And I can learn a lot. I mean, I learned how to aluminum weld because we had someone that was going to CNC the parts for the car, and he dipped out. So, we can learn a few skills at a time, but I cannot be every single one of you. You can't be everyone else in here. So if we come together and work on these things, we'll actually get somewhere. We'll actually build stuff. Progress will happen. It's pretty astonishing how amazing everyone here is, and yet how completely different we are. I mean, I have heard the most polar opposite of political opinions. I've seen people that in any other scenario at the bar would probably be getting into a fist fight. But here at this conference, they're standing shaking hands, ecstatic. You couldn't be happier because there is the common thread. There is the common goal to progress. And I just ask everyone to share what they have, and if they can't share it currently because it's confidential, I understand, write it down somewhere. Find someone who won't tell it, because it's really a shame when people pass and their secrets go down with them, and then we have to start all over. Because it's not just the one person's work. It's that person and everyone they knew their whole life, and it's really hard to replace that. I'm running out of things to say.
I think that's it.
Is there, I don't know what our time's doing right now. The schedule's changed a little bit, but
I don't know what we got.
Vernon.
We have about 20 minutes for question and answers, if you
That's
like.
perfect. Does anyone have any questions?
Can you talk about the Fresnel lenses and any other projects you're working on with those?
Yeah, so Fresnel lenses are kind of one of my favorite personal free energy devices. It's just a magnifying glass, but again, from the before mentioned, I didn't pay for the sun. You can have any array of these and be focusing down that energy into just pure heat. I mean, you got infrared radiation, all that, but you didn't pay for it. So currently our system is a net gain, even if we don't apply it to anything. I mentioned thermoelectric generators. I'm not really a fan. On this first page, our motorcycle, when Vernon came to see it, it's kind of small. The exhaust, if it's even visible to you guys, we had this square exhaust. We were trying to, that was our first method of trying to harvest the waste heat energy. We'd get a few watts, and that would run the hydrogen units, and there we go, that was free. We started getting all sorts of gains, and that was our way around people telling us it was impossible, hydrogen boosting is breaking the laws of thermodynamics. Okay, I'm pulling this off the waste heat, what are you going to say now? And it's giving so much more than just the 10 watts of energy I pulled out of the heat. We're getting a whole 300 extra watts of power on the dyno. It looks like over unity, and that's where a lot of the disconnect is. There is over unity hydrogen devices. This is not one of them. This is just cool. You can use it for health. You can use it for growing plants twice as fast. I stay away from those things talking because I'm horrified of the FDA. But I implore you to look into it. But the Fresnel lenses themselves are just a really easy way of focusing energy down, and then you can find any other way to transfer that energy, whether it's heat to electric, heat to motion like a Stirling engine. In fact, we'll probably bring one next year, just a little display device. We can have a little heat lamp above, show the temperature. You guys can go home and build this. You can get these things off the front of like those old projection TVs even, and you can melt rock with it. You're just holding it. You can literally melt rock. So if you take it out of phase a little bit, you can heat up water. I just like water. It's very strong. It's one of the best hydraulic liquids there are. And you can use it to do hammer pumps. You can just do steam expansion. You can do Tesla turbines. All of these different ways to generate electricity. And it's pretty simple. And there's none of this woo-woo stuff. It's all out there, and you can bring people in to our side of thinking by showing them there is a different way. We don't have to be burning asinine amounts of coal. We don't even have to have internal combustion engines. We can just run everything electric, and we can generate that electricity from all that free energy coming down on us.
You build a tracking device to track the sun.
Yeah, that's.
Yes, a tracking device was built to track the sun.
Yeah. You don't even have to, because a lot of the time you can just set up an array and it's cheaper, because these things you can get them free off the side of the road nonstop. But if you feel like having a really pretty cool setup, you can get literally a light sensor. Let's be a display again.
Okay.
2 arms out here. Now pretend these are a couple planks of wood coming towards you guys. And there's a couple more planks here. If you put a light sensor on each corner, you can just hook up an Arduino to tell you, okay, there's more shadow on this one. That means the sun's on this side of the X. If I can see, like you right now, perfectly between the X, I'm looking at you. You're the sun. If I can't see you from this sensor anymore because it's out of phase, you can just tell 2-axis motors, to turn your lens to where it is looking at that. You can do the same on your solar panels. You can get like almost 100% more output just by not having the sun bounce off your panels until that one nice point of the day. If you actually track the sun, you're going to get a lot more output. It's just another way of tracing down where you're hemorrhaging your efficiency and finding a solution. Did that kind of answer your question? You had a simple question, and I just went off on a tangent. Yeah?
Where did you buy your Fresnel?
I literally, out of like the 15 I've messed with, I found all of the Fresnel lenses on the side of the road from old projection TVs. Yeah, you just have to drive around. Maybe that's a Texas thing, I don't know. I guess everyone liked the big TVs. Do you have a question?
Yeah, quick question. So I'm curious. So we got the tracking of the sun down, but some of these lenses produce so much heat. How do you regulate the amount of heat based off the intensity of the sun and the clouds without frying whatever it is that you're trying to use as a reservoir, whether it's oil or water, to generate the heat or the steam or the movement?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Again, back to the Arduinos. They're so cheap, and you can have a little IR detector to see what temperature you're getting at. And you can just have one more axis, pull the lens away further. I like to just set the things where it does have a moving axis or a set amount of lenses, and you don't pinpoint it. If you pinpoint it, you'll just blast a hole straight through anything. Yeah. You can take Obsidian and just, but you just take that focal point out of phase a little bit. You just move it back, you move it forwards, and you lost the efficiency of that beam by 1,000%. But it was free, so who cares?
Free is free, dude.
Have you done anything with GEET technology?
The vapor carbureting we do is a lot similar to what happens in the GEET. David Pantone, Paul's son, will be speaking on this, and he'll probably be able to tell you a lot more about what's different with the GEET system. But just the fuel vaporizing itself, it's really just claiming wasted energy from somewhere, whether it's solar again. I just like pulling off the exhaust. It's after the system, it's after what you did. I'll pull that heat, similar to the GEET. The heat energy will separate the fuel or whatever hydrocarbon you're using in your engine. It'll separate it out. Again, you get more surface area, so whatever oxygen you have to work with, it will burn faster and more efficient. You don't get all these unburnt hydrocarbons coming out the exhaust.
Do you think the GEET really causes transmutation of elements like he claimed?
Similar to the hydrogen, there are so many levels of this stuff. I'm just talking about the simplest, like you went and got some spatulas and put them together, and like there's your hydrogen cell. Like you just took a stainless steel bottle and put it in front of your exhaust, there's your vapor carburetor. That totally works. Take your lawnmower apart, just rip off that broken carburetor that makes it sit in your garage and not do anything, pull it off, put a stainless water bottle there, and just tape a hose to it. Stainless water bottle in front of the exhaust, pour the gasoline in, you got a vapor carburetor, it'll last like 5 times longer than your 3% efficient lawnmower ever did. Anything else?
Yeah, just as a point of reference, I believe that when you are not gathering solar power as photovoltaic electricity, you can actually get approximately 650 watts per square, I believe it's per square meter. Per square meter. So if you can imagine that, basically a 3x3 lens can generate you over 650 watts of power. It's tremendous. Since we've got a little time, can I tell a little story about a reflective surface?
Get up here.
No, I'll be right here. So we were working with a 30-foot diameter satellite dish, and we covered it with a 3M reflective foil that actually turned out to be a classified material, and they wanted us to tear it off. It was kind of funny. Yeah. But with this 30-foot diameter dish, we could create a spot the size of your fist that was in excess of 3,000 degrees. I mean, when we only know it was 3,000 degrees, it vaporized our thermocouple. So we could take a 2-inch rod of steel and move it through the focal point, and it would literally vaporize and chop the steel in half as you're moving it through. And we did that, and we were playing with copper. And we had this massive Tesla coil run by a 440 generator, and we would create ball lightning in the focal point.
Yep.
And I'll tell you what, ball lightning can get angry,
Oh yeah.
very angry.
It's not fun
So-
when it explodes for no reason either.
What's that?
It's not fun when it explodes for no reason either.
No. Any more questions? Come on, guys. He's a great resource here. Yeah, I remember actually my first experience with ball lightning was to see it. I was outside of St. Louis. This huge lightning strike split the tree in half as I was driving down the road, and this ball lightning came out of the center of the tree and then jumps over and disintegrates a power transformer. And then the ball lightning came up and became real lightning and went up into the sky again. And it was a surreal experience. Okay, we do have another question. Good deal. I was pretty blunt. No.
Sometime recently, I heard a story on the radio. I wish I could give credit to the people who did the interview, but I can't. The gist of it was that somebody, I think they were in Texas, in a very conservative town, was trying to influence the town to do things in a more green, holistic way, and realizing that arguing the point about the problems of global warming, et cetera, was going exactly nowhere, if not reverse.
Yeah.
So what she did was she created some kind of project around town that was basically just easy recycling or doing little things around town that actually improved the local environment, and people could easily see, yeah, this makes things better, and then they got on board. A certain percentage of people got on board and started doing it, and they started a recycling program and cleaning up the streets. And after a year or two of doing this, then the argument over global warming sort of went away. It was just like, oh, well, of course, that's just how we do things because it's the better way to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so among all the different endeavors that you are into, brainstorm with us for a little bit. What kind of things might be tossed out and gotten into general circulation, like people would do them because it just makes sense? Like, it's nice, it makes it better, and because they were participatively involved in making things better, then it ceased to be a political opposition. It was just like, oh, of course.
Yeah. If you can remove the political or social factors from everything and just get it to be purely merit-based, it's a lot easier to go with the flow. If you see your neighbor is, planting a fruit tree, I might do that.
Like I said, probably not everybody's going to go find a Fresnel lens and use it to boil water or just distill their own home water or whatever.
Go off-grid.
But what kind of things that you're playing around with might be possible to spread that people would actually just say, oh yeah, sure?
Honestly, the easiest thing, like I mentioned before, was probably vapor carbureting just your lawn equipment. It's terrible anyways. We all hate it. So you won't be that sad when it breaks, if it breaks. And then when it doesn't break, you'll be amazed. And I have seen, vapor systems becoming more prevalent, even just in Austin. Just as people have shared it, it kind of starts cascading down. More and more people figure this out. I don't think it would have to be even a specific technology. It's just, like you said, if you bring up the point of contingency, people shut down. It doesn't matter what you say. That's why for this conference, I'm not even bringing up that you can self-run things with hydroxy. Just, if you put out on the table, hey, here's this thing, it's pretty cool, you like it, right? Yeah. And they start doing it. They can figure out later, once it's an accepted fact that we can use this, all of the much more exciting stuff will come. But us as inventors and thinkers here, we're like, well, duh, we're already at that stage. We're like, come on, just skip that boring stuff, get up here. But your approach is exactly what I like. If people can just get out and, if they have solar, or track their solar, if they just use a compost pile rather than, if they recycle things, there's just so many directions to go, and any of them being implemented would start the cascade of all of this technology. As we've seen, that's why we have That's why we have smartphones in our pocket that have access to all of the information in the universe, or human information. But thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you
Comments
very
work.
much, David and Vasiliki.
Thank you.
Next.